Chapter 20. 1. That day was a difficult one with young Kathy. She woke up in high spirits, eager to join her cousin, but when she learned of his departure, her tears and cries were so intense that even Edgar had to comfort her, assuring her that Linton would return soon. He added, though, "if I can get him," which offered little real hope. This promise did little to calm her, but time proved more effective. And although she occasionally asked her father when Linton would come back, by the time she saw him again, his features had faded so much in her memory that she didn't recognize him. Whenever I happened to meet the housekeeper from Wuthering Heights during my business trips to Gimmerton, I would inquire about the young master's well-being. He lived almost as isolated as Catherine herself, and was never seen. From her, I learned that he remained in poor health, and was a troublesome presence. She mentioned that Mr. Heathcliff seemed to dislike him more with each passing day, though he tried to hide it. He couldn't stand the sound of Linton's voice, and one couldn't tolerate being in the same room with him for long. They rarely spoke much. Linton would study his lessons and spend his evenings in a small room they called the parlour, or else he would stay in bed all day, as he was constantly plagued by coughs, colds, and various aches and pains. "And I've never known such a timid creature," the woman added, "nor one so cautious about himself. He insists on keeping the window shut if I leave it open a bit late in the evening. Oh, it's unbearable, a breath of neat air. And he insists on having a fire even in the middle of summer. Joseph's tobacco pipe is poison to him. He constantly demands sweets and delicacies, and always milk, endlessly milk, without a thought for how the rest of us suffer through the winter. There he sits, wrapped in his fur cloak by the fire, with some toast and water or other concoction on the hob to sip. And if Hareton, out of kindness, tries to entertain him, Hareton's not ill-natured, just gruff. They inevitably end up parting with one swearing and the other crying. I believe the master would actually enjoy seeing Earnshaw beat him to a pulp, if he weren't his son. And I'm sure he'd be ready to throw him out if he knew half the pampering he gives himself. But he avoids temptation. He never enters the parlour. And if Linton starts acting up in the house, he's sent upstairs immediately. From this account, I gathered that a complete lack of sympathy had made young Heathcliff selfish and disagreeable, if he wasn't that way to begin with, and as a result, my interest in him waned, though I still felt a pang of sorrow for his situation, and wished he had stayed with us. Mr. Edgar encouraged me to gather information. He seemed to think a lot about him, and might have taken some risks to see him. He once told me to ask the housekeeper if he ever came into the village. She said he had only been twice, on horseback, accompanying his father, and both times he pretended to be utterly exhausted for 3 or 4 days afterward. That housekeeper left, if I remember correctly, 2 years after he arrived. Another, whom I didn't know, succeeded her and still lives there. Time passed at the Grange in its usual pleasant way until Miss Cathy turned 16 on the anniversary of her birth. We never showed any signs of celebration, as it was also the day my late mistress passed away. Her father would always spend this day alone in the library, and at dusk he'd walk to Gimmerton kirkyard, often staying there well past midnight. Consequently, Catherine had to find her own ways to amuse herself. This particular March 20th was a stunning spring day, and once her father had withdrawn, my young lady came downstairs, dressed to go out. She asked if we could take a walk along the edge of the moor. Mr. Linton had permitted it, provided we didn't go far, and returned within the hour. "Hurry up, Ellen," she exclaimed. "I know exactly where I want to go. There's a colony of moor game settled there, and I want to see if they've started nesting." "That must be quite a way up," I replied. "They don't nest right at the moor's edge." "No, it's not far," she insisted. "I've been very close with Papa." I donned my bonnet and set out, thinking little of it. She darted ahead of me, then returned to my side, only to dash off again like a young greyhound. Initially, I found plenty of delight in listening to the lark singing all around, basking in the sweet, warm sunshine, and watching her, my cherished one, my joy, with her golden course flying loose behind her, her cheeks as soft and fresh as a wild rose, and her eyes shining with unclouded happiness. In those days, she was a joyful soul, almost angelic. It's unfortunate she couldn't find contentment. "Well," I said, "where are your moor game, Miss Cathy? We should be after them. The Grange Park fence is quite a distance now." "Oh, just a little further, only a little further, Ellen," she kept saying. "Climb that hillock, cross that bank, and by the time you reach the other side, I'll have stirred ye up the birds." But there were so many hillocks and banks to climb and cross that eventually I grew tired and told her we needed to stop and head back. I called out to her as she had got a feet ahead. She either didn't hear me or chose to ignore me, for she continued to bound forward, and I had no choice but to follow. Finally, she disappeared into a hollow, and by the time I caught sight of her again, she was 2 miles closer to Wuthering Heights than to her own home. I saw a couple of people detain her, one of whom I was certain was Mr. Heathcliff himself. Cathy had been caught in the act of either poaching or at least searching for grouse nests. The Heights were Heathcliff's land, and he was reprimanding the trespasser. "I haven't taken any, nor found any," she said, as I struggled to reach them, spreading her hands to support her claim. "I didn't intend to take them. But Papa told me there are plenty up here, and I wanted to see the eggs." Heathcliff looked at me with a malicious smile, indicating his familiarity with us and, consequently, his hostility, and asked who Papa was. "Mr. Linton of Thrushcross Grange," she replied. "I thought you didn't recognize me, or you wouldn't have spoken like that. So you think your father is well regarded and respected, do you?" he retorted with a hint of sarcasm. "And who are you?" Catherine asked, scrutinizing the speaker with curiosity. "I've seen that man before. Is he your son?" She gestured towards Hareton, who had grown only in size and strength over the past 2 years, still as ungainly and rough as ever. "Miss Cathy," I interjected, "if we don't head back soon, we'll be out for 3 hours instead of 1. We really must return." "No, that man isn't my son," Heathcliff replied, brushing past me. "But I do have a son, and you've met him before. Even if your nurse is in a rush, I think both of you could use a little rest. Why not turn this corner of the heath and come into my home? You'll get back sooner for the break, and you'll be warmly welcomed. I whispered to Catherine that under no circumstances should she agree to the invitation. It was completely out of the question. "Why?" she asked aloud. "I'm exhausted from all this running, and the ground is damp with dew. I can't just sit here. Let's go, Ellen. Besides, he claims I've met his son. I think he's mistaken, but I have an idea where he lives. At that farmhouse I passed on my way from Penistone Crags. Don't you know it?" "I do. Come on, Nellie, keep quiet. It'll be a surprise for her to drop in on us. Hareton, go ahead with the girl. You can walk with me, Nellie." "No, she's not going anywhere like that," I protested, trying to free my arm from his grip. But she was nearly at the doorstep already, racing around the corner at full speed. Her supposed escort didn't even try to accompany her. He veered off to the side of the road and disappeared. "Mr. Heathcliff, this is very wrong," I insisted. "You know you have no good intentions. She'll see Linton, and everything will come out as soon as we get back, and I'll be blamed." "I want her to see Linton," he replied. "He's been looking better these past few days. It's rare he's presentable, and will easily convince her to keep the visit a secret. What's the harm in that?" "The harm is that her father would despise me if he found out I let her into your house, and I'm certain you have some sinister motive for encouraging her," I responded. "My intentions are as honest as they can be." "I'll lay it all out for you," he said. "The plan is for the two cousins to fall in love and marry. I'm doing your master a favor. His young girl has no prospects, and if she agrees to my plan, she'll be set up immediately as a co-heir with Linton." "If Linton were to die," I replied, "and his health is quite precarious, Catherine would inherit." "No, she wouldn't," he countered. "There's nothing in the will to ensure that. His estate would come to me. But to avoid any disputes, I want them to marry, and I'm determined to make it happen." "And I'm determined she will never set foot in your house with me again," I shot back as we reached the gate, where Miss Cathy was waiting for us. Heathcliff told me to hold my tongue, and walking ahead, hurried to open the door. My young lady glanced at him several times, as if unsure what to make of him, but now he smiled when he caught her eye and softened his tone when speaking to her. Foolishly, I thought perhaps the memory of her mother might deter him from wishing her harm. Linton was standing by the fireplace. He had been out walking in the fields, as evidenced by his cap, and was calling for Joseph to bring him tri-shoes. Pierre, he had grown tall for his age, still a few months shy of 16. His features were still delicate, and his eyes and complexion were brighter than I remembered, though it was a fleeting glow borrowed from the fresh air and warm sun. "Who is that?" Mr. Heathcliff asked Cathy, turning his gaze toward her. "Can you tell?" "Your son," she replied, hesitantly examining first one, then the other. Yes, he confirmed. "But is this the first time you've seen him? Think. Ah, your memory is short. Linton, do you remember your cousin, the one you were so eager to meet?" "What, Linton?" Cathy exclaimed, her face lighting up with joyful surprise at the mention of his name. "Is that little Linton? He's taller than I am. Are you Linton?" The young man stepped forward, acknowledging his identity. She kissed him warmly, and they both marveled at how time had transformed each of them. Catherine had reached her full height. Her figure was both full and slender, as resilient as steel. Her entire presence vibrant with health and energy. Linton appeared frail and moved languidly, his frame exceedingly slight. Yet there was a grace in his demeanor that softened these shortcomings, making him not unpleasant. After exchanging many affectionate gestures with him, Cathy approached Mr. Heathcliff, who lingered by the door, dividing his attention between the scene inside and the view outside, feigning interest in the latter while truly focused on the former. "And so you're my uncle," she exclaimed, reaching up to greet him. "I thought I liked you, even though you seemed grumpy at first. Why don't you come to the Grange with Linton? Living so close all these years and never visiting us is strange. Why have you done that?" "I visited a bit too often before you were born," he replied. "There, damn it! If you have any kisses to spare, give them to Linton. They're wasted on me." "Naughty Ellen!" cried Catherine, rushing over to shower me with her affectionate embraces. "Wicked Ellen, trying to stop me from coming in. But I'll take this walk every morning from now on. May I, Uncle? And sometimes bring Father. Won't you be happy to see us?" "Of course," the uncle replied, barely concealing a grimace, as he deeply disliked the idea of either visitor. "But wait," he continued, turning to the young lady. "Now that I think about it, I should tell you. Mr. Linton holds a grudge against me. We once quarrelled with unchristian ferocity. If you mention visiting me to him, he'll likely forbid your visits altogether. Therefore, you must keep it to yourself, unless you're indifferent about seeing your cousin again. You can visit if you wish, but don't speak of it." "Why did you argue?" Catherine asked, visibly disappointed. "He thought I was too poor to marry his sister," Heathcliff replied, "and he was upset that I succeeded. His pride was wounded, and he'll never let it go." "That's unfair," the young lady exclaimed. "I'll tell him that one day. But Linton and I aren't part of your conflict. I won't come here then. He should visit the Grange." "It's too far for me," her cousin murmured. "Walking 4 miles would be the end of me. No, come here, Miss Catherine, occasionally. Not every day, but once or twice a week." The father shot his son a look of scornful disdain. "I'm afraid, Nellie, I'm wasting my efforts," he muttered to me. "Miss Catherine, as the fool calls her, will realize his worth and send him packing. Now, if it had been Hareton, do you know, I envy Hareton 20 times a day, despite his lowly state. I'd have loved the boy if he was someone else. But I believe he's safe from her affection. I'll set him against that feeble creature unless it stirs itself quickly. We reckon it won't last much past 18. Damn the insipid thing. He's too busy drying his feet to even glance at her. Linton?" "Yes, father," the boy replied. "Is there nothing you can show your cousin around here? Not even a rabbit or a weasel's nest? Take her to the garden before you change your shoes, and then to the stable to see your horse." "Wouldn't you rather stay here?" Linton asked Cathy, his tone betraying his reluctance to move. "I'm not sure," she said, her eyes drifting longingly towards the door, clearly eager to be on the move. He remained seated, inching closer to the fire. Heathcliff stood up, headed to the kitchen, and then out to the yard, calling for Hareton. Hareton answered, and soon the two returned. The young man had been washing up, evident from the flush on his cheeks and his damp hair. "Oh, I'll ask you, Uncle," Miss Cathy exclaimed, recalling the housekeeper's claim. "He's not my cousin, is he?" "Yes," he replied, "your mother's nephew." "Don't you like him?" Catherine's expression was peculiar. "Isn't he a handsome young man?" he pressed on. The impudent little thing stood on her toes and whispered something into Heathcliff's ear. He laughed. Hareton's face clouded over. It was clear he was sensitive to perceive insults and had a vague awareness of his own shortcomings. But his master or guardian dispelled the frown by exclaiming, "You'll be the favourite among us, Hareton. She says you're what was it? Well, something very complimentary. Now go with her around the farm, and remember to act like a gentleman. No foul language. Don't stare when the young lady isn't looking at you, and be ready to hide your face when she is. Speak slowly, and keep your hands out of your pockets. Off you go, and entertain her as best you can." He watched them as they walked past the window. Earnshaw kept his face turned completely away from his companion, as if he were observing the familiar scenery with the fresh eyes of a stranger or an artist. Catherine stole a glance at him, showing little admiration. She then turned her attention to finding her own amusements, skipping along cheerfully and humming a tune to fill the silence. "I've silenced him," Heathcliff remarked. "He won't dare utter a word. Nellie, do you remember me at his age? Or even younger? Did I ever seem so clueless, as Joseph would say?" "Worse," I answered, "because you were more solid with it." "I find a certain satisfaction in him," he continued, speaking his thoughts aloud. "He's met my expectations. If he were a natural fool, it wouldn't be half as gratifying. But he's no fool. I can relate to all his feelings, having experienced them myself. I know exactly what he's enduring now, though it's just the start of what he'll endure. He'll never rise above his pit of crudeness and ignorance. I've got him more tightly than his scoundrel of a father ever had me, and lower, for he takes pride in his brutishness. I've taught him to dismiss anything beyond the animal as foolish and weak. Don't you think Hindley would be proud of his son if he could see him? Almost as proud as I am of mine. But there's a distinction here. One is gold, used as paving stones, while the other is tin polished to mimic a silver service. Mine lacks any inherent value, yet I take pride in making it stretch as far as it can. His had exceptional qualities, now squandered, worse than useless. I have no regrets. He would have more than anyone, except, perhaps, me realizes. And the best part is, Hareton is fiercely fond of me. You must admit I've outdone Hindley there. If that dead villain could rise from his grave to scold me for wronging his son, I'd relish watching the son defend me, outraged that anyone would dare criticize his only friend in the world. Heathcliff let out a wicked laugh at the thought. I remained silent, knowing he expected no response. Meanwhile, our young companion, seated too far to catch our words, began showing signs of restlessness, lightly regretting his decision to forgo Catherine's company out of fear of a little fatigue. His father noticed the restless glances toward the window and the hesitant hand reaching for his cap. "Get up, you lazy boy!" he exclaimed with feigned cheerfulness. "Quick, after them! They're just around the corner by the beehives. Linton summoned his strength and left the warmth of the hearth. The window was open, and as he stepped outside, I overheard Cathy asking her uncommunicative companion about the inscription above the door. Hareton looked up, scratching his head in bewilderment. "It's some cursed writing," he replied. "I can't read it." "Can't read it?" exclaimed Catherine. "I can read it. It's in English. But I want to know why it's there." Linton chuckled, showing the first sign of amusement. "He doesn't know his letters," he said to his cousin. "Can you believe there's someone so incredibly ignorant?" "Is he all there?" Miss Cathy asked seriously. "Or is he simple-minded? I've asked him twice now, and each time he looks so clueless that I think he doesn't understand me. I'm not sure I understand him either." Linton laughed again, casting a mocking glance at Hareton, who indeed seemed quite lost in comprehension at that moment. "There's nothing wrong except laziness. Isn't that right, Earnshaw?" he remarked. "My cousin thinks you're a fool. That's what you got for dismissing book learning, as you'd call it. Catherine, have you noticed his dreadful Yorkshire accent?" "Why, what's the point of it?" grumbled Hareton, more inclined to respond to his daily companion. He was about to say more, but the two young ones burst into laughter. My flighty miss was thrilled to find she could turn his peculiar speech into a source of amusement. "What is the point of the devil in that sentence?" giggled Linton. "Papa told you not to use bad words, and you can't speak without one. Try to act like a gentleman, won't you? If you were more boy than girl, I'd knock you down right now, I would. You pitiful wisp of a creature," retorted the angry rustic, retreating, his face flushed with a mix of anger and embarrassment. He knew he was being mocked and was unsure how to respond. Mr. Heathcliff, having overheard the exchange as well as I, smiled as he watched him leave. But then he cast a look of distinct dislike at the flippant pair, who lingered in the doorway, chattering away, the boy animatedly discussing Hareton's flaws and mishaps, and the girl enjoying his cheeky and spiteful remarks, without considering the malice they revealed. I began to feel more dislike than pity for Linton, and found myself somewhat understanding his father's low opinion of him. We stayed until the afternoon. I couldn't bring myself to pull Miss Cathy away any sooner. Fortunately, my master hadn't left his room and was unaware of how long we had been gone. As we walked back, I wanted to enlighten her about the people we had just left, but she was convinced I was biased against them. "Aha!" she exclaimed. "You're on Papa's side, Ellen. I know you're partial. Otherwise, you wouldn't have misled me all these years into thinking Linton lived far away. I'm really quite angry, but I'm so happy I can't show it. But you mustn't say anything about my uncle. He's my uncle, remember. And I'll give Papa a piece of my mind for fighting with him." And so she continued, until I gave up trying to correct her misunderstanding. She didn't mention the visit that night, because she didn't see Mr. Linton. The next day, everything came out, much to my dismay. Though I wasn't entirely upset, I thought Mr. Linton would be better suited to handle the task of guiding and warning her, but he was too hesitant to provide convincing reasons for why she should avoid associating with the household at the Heights. And Catherine liked having solid reasons for any restriction that challenged her indulged will. "Papa," she exclaimed after the morning greetings, "guess who I saw yesterday during my walk on the moors?" "Oh, Papa, you started without me. You didn't do the right thing, did you? I saw everything. But listen, let me tell you how I figured it out. And Ellen, who was in on it with you, pretended to feel sorry for me while I kept hoping, and was always let down about Linton not coming back." She recounted her adventure and its aftermath with precision, and though my master gave me more than one reproachful glance, he remained silent until she finished. Then he pulled her close and asked if she understood why he had kept Linton's proximity a secret from her. Did she think it was to deny her a simple joy? "It was because you didn't like Mr. Heathcliff," she replied. "So you think I care more about my own feelings than yours, Cathy?" he asked. "No, it wasn't because I disliked Mr. Heathcliff, but because Mr. Heathcliff dislikes me. He's a truly malicious man, eager to harm and destroy those he despises, given the slightest chance. I knew you couldn't maintain a relationship with your cousin without encountering him, and I knew he would loathe you because of me. So, for your own sake and nothing else, I took steps to ensure you wouldn't see Linton again. I intended to explain this as you grew older, and I'm sorry I put it off. But Mr. Heathcliff was quite friendly, father," Catherine remarked, still unconvinced. "He didn't mind us seeing each other. He even said I could visit his house whenever I wanted, as long as I didn't tell you. Because you had a falling out with him and refused to forgive him for marrying Aunt Isabella, and you still won't. You're the one at fault here. He's willing to let us, Linton and me, be friends. But you aren't?" My father, realizing she wouldn't accept his word on her uncle-in-law's malicious nature, quickly outlined Heathcliff's behaviour towards Isabella and how he came to own Wuthering Heights. He couldn't dwell on the topic for long. Though he rarely spoke of it, the horror and loathing for his old adversary had consumed him ever since Mrs. Linton's death. She might still be alive if it weren't for him, was his constant bitter thought, and to him, Heathcliff seemed like a murderer. Miss Cathy, familiar only with her minor misdeeds, acts of disobedience, unfairness, and passion born of a fiery temper and thoughtlessness, always regretted by the next day, was astonished by the depth of malice that could harbour revenge for years and carry out its schemes without a shred of remorse. She was so profoundly affected and shocked by this new perspective on human nature. Something absent from all her studies and ideas until now, that Mr. Edgar decided it was unnecessary to continue the discussion. He simply added, "You'll understand later, my dear, why I want you to stay away from his house and family. For now, go back to your usual activities and don't think about them any more." Catherine kissed her father and settled down to her lessons for a couple of hours, as was her routine. Later, she joined him for a walk in the grounds, and the day unfolded as it typically did. But that evening, when she had retired to her room and I went to help her undress, I found her kneeling by the bedside, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, come now, silly child," I exclaimed. "If you had any real troubles, you'd be embarrassed to shed tears over such a minor setback. You've never experienced true sorrow, Miss Catherine. Imagine, just for a moment, if Master and I were gone. and you were left alone in the world. Hey, how would you feel then? Compare this situation to such a loss, and be grateful for the friends you have instead of longing for more. I'm not crying for myself, Ellen, she replied. It's for him. He expected to see me again tomorrow, and now he'll be so disappointed. He'll wait for me, and I won't be there. That's nonsense, I said. Do you really think he's thought about you as much as you've thought about him? Doesn't he have Harton for company? Hardly anyone would mourn the loss of a relative they'd only met twice, over 2 afternoons. Linton will guess the situation and won't bother himself further about you. But can't I write him a note to explain why I can't visit? She asked, standing up. And just send those books I promised to lend him? His books aren't as nice as mine, and he was really eager to have them when I told him how fascinating they were. Can't I, Ellen? No, absolutely not, I replied firmly. If you do, he'll write back, and it will never end. No, Miss Catherine. The acquaintance must be completely severed. That's what your father expects, and I'll make sure it happens. But how can one little note? She began again, her face pleading. Enough! I cut her off. We won't start with your little notes. Get into bed. She shot me a look so mischievous that I refused to give her a goodnight kiss at first. Instead, I tucked her in and closed her door, feeling quite annoyed. But halfway down the hall, regret tugged at me, and I quietly returned. There she was, standing at the table, with a blank piece of paper and a pencil, which she quickly hid when she saw me. No one's going to deliver that for you, Catherine, I said, and for now, I'm taking your candle. I snuffed out the flame. A slap on my hand and a sulky, you mean thing. Hey. I left her again, and she locked the door behind me in one of her most irritable moods. The letter did get sent, though, by a milk fetcher from the village, but I didn't find out until later. Weeks went by, and Kathy eventually calmed down, though she developed a habit of sneaking off to secluded spots. Often, if I approached her suddenly while she was reading, she'd jump and hunch over the book, clearly trying to hide it. I noticed bits of loose paper sticking out from the pages. She also started coming downstairs early in the morning, lingering in the kitchen as if she were waiting for something. And she had a small drawer in the library cabinet that she would fuss over for hours, always taking the key with her when she left. One day, as she was inspecting this drawer, I noticed that the toys and trinkets it used to hold had been replaced by folded pieces of paper. My curiosity and suspicions were piqued. I resolved to take a look at a secret stash. So, that night, once she and my master were safely upstairs, I searched and found among my house keys one that fit the lock. I opened the drawer, emptied its contents into my apron, and took them to my room to examine at my leisure, though I couldn't help but suspect I was still taken aback to find a collection of correspondence, almost daily, it seemed, from Linton Heathcliff, responses to letters she had sent him. The earlier ones were awkward and brief, but over time they blossomed into lengthy love letters, foolish as one might expect from someone his age, yet with occasional hints that seemed borrowed from a more seasoned voice. Some struck me as particularly strange blends of passion and dullness, starting with intense emotion, only to end in the affected, verbose style a schoolboy might use when writing to an imagined ethereal sweetheart. Whether Kathy found them satisfying, I can't say. But to me, they seemed utterly worthless. After sifting through as many as I deemed necessary, I tied them up in a handkerchief and set them aside, locking the empty drawer once more. As was her routine, my young lady came down early and headed to the kitchen. I watched her approach the door when a certain little boy arrived. And while the dairymaid filled his can, she slipped something into his jacket pocket and retrieved something else. I circled around through the garden and lay in wait for the messenger. He put up a brave fight to protect his charge, and we ended up spilling the milk between us. But I managed to snatch the letter, and after threatening serious consequences if he didn't hurry home, I stayed by the wall and read Miss Cathy's affectionate note. It was simpler and more heartfelt than her cousin's, very charming and very naive. I shook my head and wandered back into the house, lost in thought. With the day being rainy, she couldn't amuse herself by wandering the pike. So, after finishing her morning studies, she sought comfort in the drawer. Her father sat at the table, absorbed in his reading, while I deliberately busied myself with some loose threads on the window curtain, keeping a watchful eye on her actions. No bird returning to feed its nest, plundered of its chirping young, could have shown utter despair than she did with her single exclamation, "Oh!" and the transformation of her once joyful face. Mr. Linton looked up. "What's wrong, my dear? Have you hurt yourself?" he asked. His gentle tone and expression reassured her that he hadn't discovered the secret stash. "No, Papa," she managed to say. Ellen, come upstairs. I feel sick." I heeded her call and followed her out. "Oh, Ellen, you have them," she began at once, dropping to her knees as soon as we were alone. "Please, give them back to me, and I promise I'll never do it again." "Don't tell Papa. You haven't told him, have you, Ellen? Please say you haven't. I've been terribly naughty, but I promise I won't do it again." With a stern demeanor, I instructed her to stand. "So," I declared, "Miss Catherine, it seems you've gotten yourself into quite a bit of trouble. You should be embarrassed by this. What a collection of nonsense you occupy yourself with in your free time. It's fit to be published. And what do you think the master will say when I show this to him? I haven't revealed it yet, but don't think for a moment that I'll keep your absurd secrets. Shame on you. You must have been the one to start writing such foolishness. He wouldn't have thought of it on his own, I'm sure." I didn't, Kathy sobbed, her heart nearly breaking. "I never even thought of loving him until—" "Loving!" I exclaimed, dripping with scorn. "Loving! Has anyone ever heard such nonsense? I might as well talk about loving the miller who comes once a year to buy our corn." Quite the affectionate display, indeed. And in total, you've spent barely 4 hours with Linton in your entire life. Now, let's see what your father thinks of this so-called love." She lunged for her cherished letters, but I held them high above her reach. She then unleashed a torrent of desperate pleas, begging me to burn them, anything but show them. Honestly, I was more inclined to laugh than to reprimand her, as I saw it all as youthful vanity. Eventually, I softened somewhat and asked, "If I agree to burn them, will you promise, sincerely, not to send or receive another letter book, since I see you've sent him books, lock of hair, ring, or any trinket." "We don't send trinkets," Catherine protested, her pride momentarily overshadowing her embarrassment. "Nothing at all, then, my lady?" I pressed. "Otherwise, I'm proceeding." "I promise, Ellen," she exclaimed, clutching at my dress. "Oh, please, throw them in the fire. Do it, please." But as I moved to open a space in the hearth with the poker, the thought of the sacrifice became unbearable for her. She fervently pleaded for me to spare just one or two. "Just one or two, Ellen, for Linton's sake." I untied the handkerchief and began dropping them in from an angle, watching as the flames curled up the chimney. "I will have one, you cruel wretch," she screamed, thrusting her hand into the fire and retrieving some half-burned fragments, injuring her fingers in the process. "Fine, and I'll keep some to show to Papa," I replied, shaking the rest back into the bundle and turning towards the door. She tossed her charred pieces back into the flames and gestured for me to complete the burning. I did so, stirring the ashes and burying them under a shovelful of coals. She retreated silently, feeling deeply wronged, to a private room. I went downstairs to inform my master that the young lady's bout of illness had almost passed. But I thought it best for her to rest a while. She skipped dinner, but reappeared at tea, looking pale, with reddened eyes, and remarkably subdued in demeanour. The next morning, I responded to the letter with a note saying, "Master Heathcliff is requested to send no more notes to Miss Linton, as she will not receive them." From then on, the little boy came with empty pockets.